Detectives and investigators around the world dedicate their lives to solving crimes, whether those are homicides, missing person cases, or something else entirely. Those who have worked in the investigative field will agree that some cases stick with you for life, and other cases are just so mysterious and baffling they may never be solved. Number 5. The case of John Gordon Iverson sounds like it could be a plot for a major Hollywood film. His mysterious disappearance is filled with twists, turns, and conflicting witness reports. Iverson was last seen on January 4th, 1991, and his last known movements are questionable at best. On the evening of January 4th, 51-year-old Jack Weber, who was working as a machinist, turned up at the home that Iverson and his girlfriend Kathy Monroe shared in Arizona. Weber and Iverson had previously worked together and had a solid friendship. After the two no longer worked together and had their own respective workshops, they still kept in regular contact, and Weber did odd jobs for Iverson here and there. Weber showed up at the home at around 5 p.m., but Iverson wasn't home. Instead, he spoke to Monroe and passed along a project that he'd been working on for him. In return, Monroe wrote him a check for $1,000 and told Weber that she would let Iverson know that he'd been there and to contact him. Weber explained to Monroe that the only reason he had turned up to the property was because he had tried to reach Iverson at his workshop, but there was no sign of him. Monroe was confused as to where her boyfriend could be if he wasn't at his workshop or wasn't at home. Nonetheless, she brushed it off, believing that he'd probably gone out to run some errands. Later that evening, Monroe was relieved to see Iverson's car pull into the driveway. According to her, she told him about Weber stopping by the house before she headed off to bed. According to the Charlie Project, Monroe awoke at 9:30 p.m., dazed and confused. She believed that she was simply imagining the bright light that she saw coming from the hallway. She quickly snapped into consciousness and realized that the light was from a flashlight and that it was slowly moving towards her. Weber burst into the bedroom and demanded money, claiming that he had Iverson captive. In a state of shock, Monroe scrambled to find any money that the two had around the house and was able to give him $4,000 in cash. That wasn't enough for Weber though, and he demanded that she write him a check for an additional $2,500. Luckily, Monroe was able to escape and alert the neighbors that her boyfriend had been kidnapped. This version of events came directly from Monroe. However, as we will see, the mysterious disappearance of John Gordon Iverson is anything but straightforward. According to Weber, the events of that chilly January evening transpired as follows. He claims that he and Iverson had been working on what they called a super gun, and that this invention would revolutionize the way weapons were made. He told police that the gun wouldn't need live ammunition, and that he'd been brought into the project by Iverson's request in exchange for payment. On January 4th, Weber claims that he turned up at Iverson's home to collect $8,400, an amount that he claims he was owed for his work. Upon Iverson returning home, he and Weber allegedly talked for a few hours about the new supergun that they were making, with Weber excitedly telling Iverson that he had a potential buyer. Iverson sat in Weber's van, inspecting their new creation, while Weber went inside to obtain the rest of the money that he was owed. This is where things take a strange turn. Weber claims that Monroe seemed nervous about handing over the check to him, but there was no indication that anything else was wrong. After a seemingly normal exchange between Monroe and Weber, Weber claims that Monroe snapped and ran out of the house, screaming and begging neighbors to help her. Weber was instructed by Iverson to get into the van and drive away. Iverson even comforted Weber, telling him that she would calm down in her own time. Iverson asked Weber to drive him to Bullhead City, which is around 65 miles away from his home. The next morning, Weber was shocked when he received a call from his wife, telling him to get home right away because the FBI was looking for him, believing that he had kidnapped Iverson. IVerson appeared shaken at the news and told Weber that under no circumstances would he be returning home, as he'd broken his parole terms and feared the consequences of his actions. Instead of turning himself in and explaining the entire situation, Weber went into hiding for 4 months and spent most of his time in Las Vegas. After 4 months, Weber knew that he couldn't hide forever and finally returned home to face the music. The case against him was eventually dropped due to a lack of evidence. With 2 conflicting stories and little evidence to go off of, we're left with a missing persons case that seems too strange to be true. The details presented here are only the key elements, and the case warrants a deep dive of its own. The prevailing theory is that his kidnapping and disappearance was an elaborately staged ploy so that he could disappear into the shadows and relinquish his responsibilities. In 1990, he'd been found guilty of stealing telegraph wire and was also under investigation for tax fraud and evasion. John Gordon IVerson was last seen on January 4th, 1991, and is described as a white male with gray hair and brown eyes. He's 5'8", 190 pounds, and has a previous fracture to his left hand. He was also a heavy smoker and was last seen wearing a gray size large Jersey's brand sweatshirt, matching pants, and black trainers with Velcro fastenings. If you have any information, you're asked to contact police at 928-680-5413. Number 4. Helen Irene Tucker, also known as Helen Irene Cook, was last seen on January 20th, 1994 in Tacoma, Washington. At the time of her disappearance, Helen had a 3-year-old son and was working on the streets to help provide for her son, and also fund her addiction. According to her family, they were completely unaware that she was engaged in street work or was battling addiction, but her mother, Frida Gable, did comment that she was uncontrollable. The details in Helen's case are sparse, and there's lots of speculation as to the events that led up to her disappearance. There are only a handful of news reports, and most of the information comes from the Facebook page Missing Helen that is run by her family and various missing persons blogs. On the evening that she disappeared, Helen contacted the police to report that she'd been assaulted by a male customer, but the outcome of this call and the subsequent investigation is unknown. After this, Helen was never seen or heard from again. In a bizarre twist, Helen was not officially reported missing until 2000, 6 years after she vanished. Her family believed that she'd been reported missing in 1994, but police were unable to find a report under her name. As so many years had passed, police in Tacoma, Washington went to every effort they could to track down Helen's friends and known associates. Some investigators believed that Helen fell victim to the Green River Killer, also known as Gary Ridgway, though Ridgway has never confessed to being responsible. Helen's family have never given up hope and believe that she may be living amongst the homeless population in Colorado, as she has ties to the area. When Helen disappeared, she left behind a 3-year-old son, and now her family are desperate for answers. Helen Irene Tucker, or Cook, is described as a white female with brown hair and blue eyes. She's 5'5" and 115 pounds. She has a tattoo of a rose with a snake and a dagger on her upper right forearm, as well as a rose and a gnome on her upper left forearm. She's also missing a tooth in the upper front and is considered endangered and missing. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Tacoma Police Department at 253-591-5506. Number 3. 20-year-old Angela Marie Hammond was well liked by everyone that knew her, and was also described as popular in her hometown of Clinton, Missouri. When she wasn't studying at Central Missouri State University, Angela worked at a local bank, and it seemed that the pieces of her life were slowly coming together. Things were certainly looking up for the young woman when her boyfriend, Rob Schaefer, proposed to her in January of 1991. Little did the couple know that their engagement bliss would be cut short just 3 months later. On the evening of April 4th, 1991, the newly engaged couple spent some time together before Angela dropped Rob back at his house and headed to a friend's house. The two had plans to meet up again later that evening, and at 11:15 p.m., Angela called Rob from a payphone located at the intersection of Jefferson and 2nd Street. The two chatted for a few minutes, but Angela couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. As she stood on the phone with her fiancé, she saw a man in a green Ford pickup truck circling the block. She relayed as much information as she could to Rob, telling him that she was getting freaked out by the strange man driving circles around her. This unknown assailant got out of his car and pretended as if he was looking for something. Angela politely asked if he needed to use the phone, but he said he would try the other phones once he had found what he was looking for. The man wasn't looking for anything, nor did he want to use the phone. He'd found exactly what he was looking for, a victim. The casual conversation between Rob and Angela was interrupted by Angela's screams as she was grabbed by the unknown man and thrown into his car. Rob lunged into action and jumped into his car and drove to the spot where the phone was located. As he approached the phone, he saw a green Ford pickup speeding away and heard Angela screaming his name. In the process of following the unknown man, Rob damaged his car and was only able to follow him for around 2 miles before his car broke down. The Clinton Police Department was immediately called to the scene, and Rob relayed all of the information to them, telling them that Angela had described the man as bearded and filthy. To this day, the unknown man in the green pickup truck has never been identified, and Angela has never been heard from again. Her case has been linked to 2 other similar crimes in Missouri, but investigators don't have enough evidence to charge anyone for any of these cases. Angela Hammond was last seen on April 4th, 1991, and is described as a white female with brown hair and brown eyes. She has a scar on her upper lip and wears contact lenses. There have been reported sightings of Angela in Canada and the US. However, these have never been confirmed. Angela was 4 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance and stood at 4'11" and 120 to 140 pounds. If you have any information, you're asked to contact the Clinton Police Department at 660-885-5561. Number 2. Frances Groves is officially listed as last being seen on January 1st, 1955 by NamUs and the Doe Network. However, other sources claim that she went missing in 1954. Frances's case is yet another missing persons case that is plagued by a lack of information. Most of what we know about Frances and her disappearance comes from her family and friends and law enforcement who have not publicly released a lot of details in her case. Nevertheless, Frances's family deserves closure, and her case deserves to be highlighted. Born on April 20th, 1915 in Nebraska, she was one of 8 siblings, and her parents certainly had a lot on their hands. When she was just 14 years old, she moved from her family home in Nebraska to Colorado after marrying a 55-year-old named Alva Lewis Groves. It's unknown as to whether Frances's parents approved of their marriage, and little is known about their married life. What we do know is that Frances and Alva had 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy, Donald. Donald was the apple of his mother's eye, and while she loved all her children equally, she especially loved her only son. That would soon change, and according to reports, Alva accidentally shot Donald, causing Frances to divorce him. Their divorce is purely speculative, as no records have ever been found to confirm this. Shortly after the two split, Frances found herself a new boyfriend, Jim Fye. The two left Colorado and lived between California and Missouri. The two had met while Frances was employed at the Pueblo Ordnance Depot and immediately hit it off. This is where the waters get murky, as some sources say that Frances was last seen with Fye in 1954, but others say 55. On the day in question, the two were seen heading out to Palm Springs, California for a picnic date, but only one of them came back, At the time, the couple was working for a wealthy family in the Palm Springs area, and when Frances didn't show up for work, her employers became concerned. Her boyfriend at the time, Vi, took his own life in 1996, leaving behind a note. Law enforcement have not disclosed what he wrote. It's unknown when the official missing persons report was made. However, she is registered as a missing person on NamUs and the Doe network. Bizarrely, she also left behind a six-figure sum of money in cash in a safety deposit box. Number 1. In 1957, Evelyn Scott's husband, Ewing, was arrested and charged with her murder. This was even though her body had never been found. The prosecution relied on circumstantial evidence, but somehow managed to pull off a conviction. While Ewing was convicted of her murder, that doesn't solve the question of what happened to Evelyn. After all, Ewing constantly proclaimed his innocence, and in 1978, he was released from prison. Evelyn Scott was last seen at her home in Bel Air, Los Angeles on May 15, 1955, by her husband Ewing Scott. Evelyn had been married 4 times before, making Ewing husband number 5. Her family had no issue with this, however, they did have an issue with Ewing himself. He claimed to be an investment banker, but after engaging him in conversation about his work, her brother, Raymond, quickly discovered that he was a fraud. He warned his younger sister, but his warnings fell on deaf ears. Her family believes that Ewing's motivation for marrying Evelyn was money. During their 6 short years of marriage, she had cashed out over $223,000 in securities and had withdrawn about $180,000 from her estate. She was also said to be worth around $1 million and had multiple streams of income that allowed her to pursue her passion of traveling around the world. As mentioned above, Evelyn did cash out some money from her estate and left this around the house as well as in safety deposit boxes. On the afternoon of May 16, 1955, Evelyn and Ewing test drove a new car, and Ewing let slip in casual conversation that they had plans to move to Spain or Portugal very shortly. So was Ewing planting the seed for Evelyn's disappearance, or was he telling the truth? This salesman is the last person to have ever seen Evelyn alive, and friends and family became concerned when they were unable to reach her on May 16th. Ewing brushed them off, telling them that she'd likely checked herself into a mental facility to deal with her alleged alcoholism, or that she had simply run away. He seemed to be unsympathetic towards their concerns, and was certainly in no rush to report her missing or search for her. It wasn't until March of 1956 that Evelyn was officially reported missing by her brother, Raymond. Raymond, along with concerned friends and family, had pushed the district attorney's office to open an investigation into her disappearance in 1955. But for some reason, no missing persons report was filed at the time. During their investigation, the district attorney found that Ewing had been forging Evelyn's signature to withdraw money from her estate. When Evelyn was finally reported missing, local law enforcement performed a search of her Bel Air home and found 2 pairs of glasses, an upper front denture plate, and some of Evelyn's medication. All of these items were confirmed to belong to Evelyn, and these are items that she would not have left without, especially since she suffered from diverticulitis and needed her medication. As the circumstantial evidence against Ewing mounted, he had no intentions of standing trial. For 5 months, he went on the run before finally being captured and extradited to California. Throughout the trial, Ewing professed his innocence and said that his beloved wife, Evelyn, wasn't even dead. Despite this, Ewing was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, though he was released in 1978. His defense argued that the court had failed to prove that she had passed away, and the case of what happened to Evelyn Scott remains a mystery. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.